Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Tonight I wanted to talk about, or today I wanted to talk about manual of arms. And the reason why this comes up is I've seen several videos in the last couple weeks where they've shown kids in other countries using AKs in class, and they're learning how to field strip them and go through the manual of arms. Now, if you don't know what manual of arms are, it's how you use the weapon. And a lot of people will talk about, training and actually dry fire training and doing other things, but do you actually get to the nitty gritty of what you're doing with your firearm? So you don't need a lot of ammunition to train, and when you do train, you should train efficiently. So let's talk about the basics of America's most popular rifle and why you should know where these pieces are, how they work, and what they do. So the first piece I wanted to talk about was in the upper left-hand corner here is the AR-15 safety. Now, if you don't know where it is on the AR-15, it's just above the pistol grip. And depending upon the model of AR-15 you may have one that's on both sides, or you may have one that's on just one side. And the reason why it's that way is because originally there is no ambidextrous controls on the AR-15. It's through modernization and customization that we've gotten to where safeties can be on both sides, or that we have controls on both sides of the weapon. Now, the safety, why do you care about this? Well, first off, you should know where your safety is so you keep the gun as safe as you possibly can. When you're dry fire training, you should be working with an empty gun. You should be practicing how to change your magazines, how to fix a malfunction, how to, and I would say even induce a malfunction so that you can learn how to clear them. Now, right below that is the charging handle of the AR-15. This is actually what you pull to make the bolt carrier come back into the receiver extension so that you can feed the first round of ammunition into the chamber and start using the weapon. This is also something you're going to use if there's an actual malfunction. So a malfunction, what is a malfunction? A malfunction is a brass is stuck. A round didn't clear, or a brass didn't clear all the way out of the chamber, and it's still stuck in the gun. The magazine didn't feed correctly, or you got a double feed into the chamber, and you're got to clear that stuff out. So you would pull this backwards towards you so that you could, where the barrel pointed in a safe direction, so that you would make sure you could clear out what's in there. Now, a lot of times, if it's a really bad malfunction, you're going to want to drop the magazine. And the magazine, if you look at to the right of that charging handle one, is highlighted in red, okay? There's two pictures of it. The first one just has a red, the other one has a blue circle too. I'll talk about that blue circle here in a minute. But that's where your magazine well is, and that itself is a magazine. Now, the magazine is the feeding device of your rifle. It actually loads ammunition up into the chamber, each cycling of the bolt carrier group, and this allows the gun to work. Now, that blue circle, what is that? On the AR-15 specifically, there's something called a bolt stop. So if you empty the magazine on an AR-15, you fired your 30 rounds or whatever magazine capacity you have, at the end of that, there is a follower that pushes bullets up. On the back of that follower, there's a little tab, and that little tab activates that, what is lovingly known as the ping pong paddle. Now, what this does is it actually tilts so that the bolt stays in the rearward position. Now, why is that a thing? The idea is that when you drop your magazine, and I should have put the magazine release on it, but you can see it where that blue circle is. It's just below that, but it's actually on the right side of the gun. It's just a button you push in, and there are newer ones out for the AR-15 that make it to where you can use it on either side. Mine don't have that because I found in practice, like wearing armor or as you're running through drills, I'm big enough that as the rifle hits my chest, if I have ambidextrous magazine controls, the magazine tends to fall out. So I just tend to use the standard mag release. Now, what you do there is you'd push the button, and I've always been taught to kind of canter or spin my rifle, And what that does, and it's just a little half jerk of your wrist, it causes the magazine to fall out, so you don't have to pull it out. Now, if you don't do that, you can strip it out, and do what's called a tack load, and that's before you're getting into a bad situation. You have a loaded chamber, but you want a fresh mag. You'd push your mag release, drop that mag, put it in a safe spot, take another magazine from your holdout kit or wherever you're putting your magazines, and load a fresh magazine in. So what that ping pong paddle does is after you do that, you can hit the bottom part of it, and it'll cause the bolt carrier to cycle forward manually under the spring tension, feed the first round, and you're ready to engage, or ready to continue your training, or ready to shoot more in your string. Now, why did I pick America's Rifle for this? Because you should actually know cross-platform stuff. And I've talked about cross-platform domination, like with the G3 and the AK and that type of thing. I have multiple versions of these, and learning what an AR-15's controls are, because it is the most widely accepted weapon in the United States. That's why I'm talking about this. The AKs is very much the same. It's just their controls are in different places. And this has to do with cultural influences of how the guns were designed. Western shooters are usually known to gravitate towards the AR-15 or controls similar to this. And it's because most of the weapons in the NATO alliance are the NATO parlance are made the same way, and that's for cross-training purposes. Where the Kalashnikov, you have to actually tow in a magazine, so that means you have to put the front of it in first before you seat it to the rear. These are just slide in and out. They use something called a STANAG magazine, which is a standard NATO magazine for any rifle that is in the NATO alliance that a NATO country has. They're supposed to use STANAG magazines. There's an exception with the Poles who were adapting AKs, so as long as they had AKs that carried the 5.56 round, they were allowed to be in the NATO alliance. Their new rifle, though, is an AR-15 derivative. So as much as I am a huge fan of the AK, the AR is not only the United States rifle of choice, it has rapidly became the Western world's weapon of choice. So why am I bringing this up for training? So when you don't have a lot of money for ammunition, because, ammunition isn't cheap, or you don't want to waste ammunition, but you have, 20 minutes to train real quick, or you think you do, this is something you can do in your living room with a dry gun, exchanging magazines so that you increase your muscle memory, manipulating the safety, and charging the weapon or phantom charging it by snap caps to put in your magazine. And the reason why you do this is so you learn the ins and outs of the platform. You should also know how to clean the AR-15 or whatever rifle is your rifle of choice. And there should be two types of cleaning. There's a field type cleaning, so that if you were in the field and you just needed to clean it just for maintenance before you, at the end of the day, that's what you do, okay? Me personally, with the weapons I've chosen and the maintenance schedule I have, I usually clean them about every 300 to 500 rounds with like a field cleaning. And then I do a white glove cleaning at about 1,000 or 1,500 rounds. And a white glove cleaning is where I strip everything down. You can check out Mr. Guns and Gears videos for that. He does a really, really great detailed videos on anything from AR-15s to pistols, like Glock pistols, MP5s. He's done it on the AK. It's that type of stuff. Rob Ski at AKOU, he goes through this several times on how to take apart an AK and make it clean and nice if you're going to do a white glove cleaning or if you're just going to do a field cleaning. The difference you'll find is that a white glove cleaning in the AR world is an event. There are probably twice as many parts in an AR-15 than there are an AK. And you can look at the bolt itself and figure that out. With the AR, you have an extractor claw that has to be pulled out, an extractor, the firing pin. There's also some rings that you need to investigate and check, and you also have so you want to look at the lugs on the bolt face to make sure there's no shearing or no wear. Then you start looking at the bolt carrier itself and where you're going to clean the gas key and everything else that you normally would, but you're going to do it in a finer detail. The idea here is that you're making an effort to clean and maintain your weapon, and you're looking at the parts. Now with an AK, when you do a white glove cleaning, you're removing the extractor pin and the firing pin, which are 2 pins you have to drop out of it. And there's a tool, a punch, that comes in the little AK kit that allows you to do that. And you can do that with an AK. You can do it with a magazine and that little tool, and you're done for taking apart and doing some really fine detail cleaning. The trigger groups. Now, some people will take their trigger group out of their AR and they'll go in really fine detail and clean in there. What I have found is that you can do a lot of that with a Q-tip without having to take it apart. All you're really looking for there is to make sure that the springs and like the sears are in good surface, have the great surface contact they need so that they're not going to malfunction later. One of the tests I do for a AR-15 bolt carrier group is I extend the bolt all the way out, so you pull it, and then I stand it on a flat surface, and if it collapses, it's time for new piston rings for the bolt. That is one of the, in my opinion, poor pieces of the AR-15 design, is that those rings wear off. Then you're going to clean the gun inside and out. A lot of guys will sit there and use bore brushes and beat the bore to hell. They'll clean it until it's spotless, or they think it's spotless. What you're actually doing is wearing pieces in there. It's better to use like a nylon brush so that you don't wear out the lands and the grooves in the bore. AKs notoriously use nylon brushes a lot of times. If you look at all their stuff, they've always done that, even though they use chrome-lined barrels. And modern rifles, modern AR-15s, some of them have chrome lines, some of them have nitrided barrels. And what's the difference? Chrome line means there's a plating inside that's resistant towards corrosion and getting fouling on it. The nitrided ones are actually harder. They're actually supposed to be better for accuracy. And the other thing is that they both can wear if you wear them down too much trying to clean them. So you want the bore clean, you want to get rid of the fouling, but you don't want to overdo this. So use the right solvents to get in there and let the solvent sit, and then use the brush to break that up very lightly, and use patches the rest of the time to clean out the gunk. That's all you need to do for the bore. When it comes to the other parts, lubricate them as needed. You know, the AK is one of those things that you lubricate based on condition. If you're in the desert where there's moon dust, you try not to lubricate it anywhere of that moon dust could land. In the AR, you probably need to lube it because it is more likely to cycle better when it's a little wetter. And I'm not saying over lubricate it, because over lubrication attracts dirt also. But in my opinion, you should be able to do this type of work, this type of manipulation, weapons manipulation, in the dark or blindfolded. You should be able to change your magazine. You should be able to do a basic field strip. You should be able to manipulate the controls of whatever platform you have or that you're working with by sheer muscle memory. Your hand shouldn't move, and there shouldn't be a lot of extreme movement in anything you do. It should be natural and close to where it's at. First, you bring the weapon up to your workspace so you can see what you're working with. You know, and what I've learned in training with a lot of guys is that smooth is fast, fast is smooth. You know, you can sit there and pull off the best cool Spetsnaz reload, but it doesn't work if there was a jam in the gun and you just exacerbated the jam by not looking at the chamber or turning the rifle so you could see that there was a stovepipe. You need to be aware of your weapon, and that's what I'm trying to get you guys to do, is familiarize yourself. In the rest of the world, there's been yet another mass shooting, or a couple of them, and lot of these people are going after guns hot and heavy again, and I seriously think that the reason why people are getting so nuts about this is that they're amplifying normal incidents. The mass shooting that they're calling out right now happened at a birthday party. So someone had a beef, someone fought something, and 4 people died and 3 or 4 people were hit. That's because bullets don't stop once they hit something, unless it's really hard and the bullet destroys itself or it loses momentum. So these mass casualty events, a lot of them are actually repercussions of firing in very enclosed places. They're not meant to be killing multiple people or hitting multiple people. It's also due to ineffective shooters. There's a lot of people that spray and pray. If you don't know what spray and pray means, they just shoot in the air in the direction and good luck hitting whatever. Those trained usually do not spray and pray. Usually their shots are well placed and the people that were intended to hit were intended to be hit. We live in a society, and I talked about this many times now, that there's a lot of mental health issues, and society's not getting any kinder. So I would recommend that even if you don't have a lot of ammunition, that you spend some time holding your weapon and training, because that is just as important as being on the range and doing anything else ninja-like that you think it is, because you'll see translations on the range from doing this. If you have an AK and you're trying to learn how to do a Spetsnaz load or how to reload faster. A Spetsnaz load, if you don't know, is where you actually use the magazine spine to hit the release, and at the same time you're sweeping the magazine forward and out of the gun. It's a great way. The Spetsnaz, if you don't know who they are the special operators of the Russian military, and they do this to load their gun faster. The truth of the matter is, no matter how practiced you are with an AK, you will never be faster than someone with an AR-15, unless you've trained on the AR-15 and can do that then with that same rifle. You will notice there's a difference between speed when it comes to reload with an AR-15 versus a Kalashnikov. As far as charging the weapon, to me they're the same. The only difference is that the AR-15, if it malfunctions bad enough, you have no direct connection to the bolt carrier group. You're relying mostly on the charging handle to be able to engage on parts of the gun. And I've seen that actually backfire to where you couldn't use the charging handle even to get the bolt carrier group to move. It's a type 4 malfunction where you end up with a round that's kind of above the bolt carrier and kind of wedged the gun in. There's a way around that with a magazine. You use the butt of the magazine to actually move the bolt carrier. And it takes some muscle. You can use a knife, you can use a screwdriver, you can use whatever you need at that time and place. Hope that never happens. And the reason why I say that is because that's usually you're going to get down to your secondary rifle or secondary pistol, more specifically, until you can spend some serious time with that. You can work on it and you can get it fixed and running in a short time if you know what you're doing, but it requires the type of training that I'm talking about. And this is why I tell you to go find training, like Tough CCW. They teach rifle and pistol training in Farmington, New Mexico. 505 training, I think, is what it is now. Jason Stripling owns that. And he's been to several classes and became an NRA certified guy to do it too. Tough CCW is run by Floyd Fouts. And Floyd Fouts is actually an ex-sheriff officer. He was a Marine before that, but I know he was training officers, and he's an armorer in addition to that. So you get that experience, and you get what you pay for with the trainers, is the trainers will actually run you through these things. 90% of what you do in a training class is if the gun screws up. Then they get you in the dirt. Then they get you rolling around and doing what you need to do to be proficient with firearms. And if you're going to be in the 2A, I can't explain or express how much that is a gift to you to go to training. Yeah, it's costly. It costs you time, it costs you money, it costs you effort. But nothing in life that I found that is worthwhile doesn't have effort. So these are my thoughts on the Manual of Arms and things you should be doing in your spare time to train. we're winning in the culture war. We're winning in the 2A, and I say that because we've had some dark times like Washington State. But if you look at, there was a poll that was put out by the Kaiser Institute, I think, or it corroborated what the Kaiser Institute said. And this was a poll that was put out by NBC as to how many guns were in circulation. And it turns out there's about 70 million guns in the United States, maybe 100 million, depending upon which function you look at. Some people only have one gun in their family. But there's more gun ownership than there ever has been, and that's a good thing, because the more the government tries to pull the wool over the American people, the less it has an effect when there's more of us that have the same wool or the same argument. What's even funnier about that poll was there's 10% of them, or roughly, I think he said something like 70 million, or not 70 million, 100,000 people that actually used a gun in self-defense in the last year. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you kill someone. It means sometimes they just had to brandish it, and that was enough to cause people to realign themselves and not do something stupid. There's a small percentage of that actually had to use it in self-defense and won. So we're winning in the culture war, despite what it looks like. The rulings that keep coming down for gun bans keep getting defeated, with an exception of those bastions of leftist strongholds like California or Washington State that keep, and New Jersey and New York, that keep trying to fight and buck what has actually been declared law. The new reading of the Second Amendment is to read it in the context it was written, meaning that historical context matters for the first time in a long time. That means that all those people that say the Second Amendment isn't a thing, it's only there for militias, that's not how it was read during that context and time. Same with regulation. When they mean regulation nowadays, they mean that, we can ban whatever we want. And back then, what they mean is that this was in good working order so that you could use it if you need to. Not that the state was regulating and making sure you were okay, and that the gun you chose was one that they said you could have. Meaning that there is no rifle bans, there is no pistol bans. You have to look at this in the context of what was going on. That's the big thing with the Heller decision that a lot of leftist strongholds right now are bucking against. And they're losing because the decision's been made. Whether you like it or not, the 2A is here forever. Them trying to ban these things, this war that they have on the Second Amendment, so to say, would be just as unsuccessful as the war on drugs. I would say it would be less so, because there's a lot of people in the 2A world that have nothing to do with drugs and never had a thing to do with drugs, and they don't care to have a thing to do with drugs. That's probably how it needs to be. Now, I say that where I've mentioned what I do for my other business, but what I mean is that if you're intoxicated in any way, you should probably put the gun down and go finish watching a movie. That's not the time to train. That's not the time to mess around with this stuff. It's not time to go do stuff because you're incapacitated at that point. And you need to be clear and level-headed when you're messing with firearms. Because you can see that the state is looking for any excuse, and I say the state, the government, any excuse to make you the villain, especially if you just exercise your rights. Like, share, subscribe, be great.